This is the NOVOSTAR signal. I'm DJ NOVOSTAR. Subscribe now. Not because I need your pity, not because I'm here to chase numbers like a starving clown refreshing a screen. Subscribe because if this signal reaches you, you already know this is not the usual garbage. This is not lifestyle filler. This is not fake inspiration. This is not another polished fraud teaching people how to become more acceptable, more visible, more marketable, more hollow. Subscribe because this is a transmission against contamination. Subscribe because the world is drowning in public relations dressed as personality, and somebody still has to speak with a blade. I've spent enough time around entertainment, sound, media, production, image, voices, and public-facing people to know something that most fans never want to hear. A shocking number of the people they admire are not deep, they are not strong, they are not noble, they are not even decent. They are simply managed well, that's it. Good lighting, good angles, good edits, good handlers, good captions, good timing, good PR, good myth, bad soul. That is the cut. People fall in love with packaging and call it character. They fall in love with aesthetics and call it truth. They fall in love with confidence and call it integrity. They fall in love with fame and call it significance. They fall in love with access and call it intimacy. They see a face on a screen, a quote in a caption, a perfectly tuned interview, a beautiful photo dump, a charitable sentence, a humble posture, a black and white portrait, some filtered vulnerability, and they think they are looking at a human being. No, most of the time they are looking at an edited product. And some of those products are built around people who are rotten. Not messy, rotten. Cold, arrogant, shallow, cruel, vain, entitled, predatory with attention, addicted to status, addicted to themselves, empty in the center and furious that the emptiness never gets filled, no matter how many cameras adore them. That is what fans do not understand. Public image is not character, public image is camouflage. Some of the worst human beings on earth have excellent branding. Some of the most contemptible people can look poetic online. They can look wounded, wise, sexy, revolutionary, spiritual, misunderstood, elite, dangerous, tender, authentic, politically aware, emotionally intelligent, and then off camera they are small, petty, disrespectful, hollow, manipulative. Bored by normal people, rude to workers, dismissive to anyone who cannot increase their value, fake to the bone. And the machine protects them. Because the machine does not reward goodness, it rewards marketable emotion. The machine does not ask, is this person clean? It asks, does this person convert? Does this person hold attention? Does this person stimulate desire? Does this person create narrative? Does this person keep the fans emotionally attached? Does this person make people project fantasies onto a screen? That is why the age of image is so disgusting. Because the cleaner the packaging gets, the harder it becomes for ordinary people to accept that behind the packaging there may be a deeply ugly human being. And I've seen enough of that world to say this clearly. A lot of people the public worships are not admirable at all. They are simply protected by distance. Distance is the greatest makeup artist in history. Distance turns arrogance into mystery. Distance turns coldness into charisma. Distance turns narcissism into magnetism. Distance turns manipulation into seduction. Distance turns calculation into elegance. Distance turns a cruel person into an icon. Then social media comes in and seals the illusion. Now the fraud is not just distant, it is curated every day. A controlled face, a controlled tone, a controlled vulnerability post, a controlled outreach post, a controlled black screen, a controlled statement, a controlled real moment, a controlled casual photo that took 30 attempts. A controlled glimpse into a life that does not exist the way it is being sold. And millions of people kneel before it. Not literally, worse. Psychologically. They compare themselves to it, they trust it, they defend it, they imitate it, they emotionally invest in it. They build internal worlds around people they do not know, people who may in fact be absolute trash once the lights go down. That is one of the most humiliating things about modern culture. People are not just deceived, they volunteer for deception. They want idols. They want beautiful lies. They want a face to carry their longing. They want to believe that someone on the screen is more real, more alive, more important, more complete than they are. So they hand over judgment, they hand over discernment, they hand over psychological territory, and the machine takes it. I reject that whole field. That is why Norilsk matters to me. Not because it is trendy, not because I need a fantasy city, not because I want to cosplay industrial mythology for aesthetics. Norilsk matters because in my mind it stands against this diseased civilization of surfaces. I've never been there. That is true. But some places operate as more than coordinates. They become a psychic axis, a moral climate, a signal, a correction against softness, fraud, and spectacle. Norilsk, to me, carries that weight. Why? Because when I think of Norilsk, I do not think of influencer culture. I do not think of fake smiles, fake concern, celebrity skincare routines, empty prestige, red carpets, networking events, trend reports, brand-safe personalities, polished mediocrity, or this pathetic modern obsession with appearing luminous while being spiritually weak. I think of pressure. I think of cold. I think of endurance. I think of metal, smoke, distance, labor, survival, weight, silence, and a reality too harsh to flatter anybody. Norilsk in my mind is not a postcard, it is a verdict. A city that does not care about your personal brand. A climate that does not care how good your captions are. A landscape that does not reward performance. A place where existence itself feels closer to metallurgy than theater. That is why it matters. Because in a world collapsing under fake relevance, Norilsk represents anti-fraud. It represents the end of decorative identity. It represents the death of the soft illusion that life is supposed to validate your self-image every day. It represents something industrial, severe, non-negotiable. Not comfort, condition. Not applause, endurance. Not performance, weight. That spirit matters to me because I am sick of a civilization that worships surfaces and then acts surprised when the center is empty. Look at the stars, look at the polished faces, look at the engineered personalities, look at the immaculate feeds, look at the endless content streams, look at the realness, look at the strategic vulnerability, look at the noble causes adopted at the perfect moment, look at the cool detachment. Look at the carefully managed roughness, look at the luxury made to feel intimate, look at the pain turned into aesthetic, look at the rebellion turned into merchandise. Then ask the real question. Who are these people when the room is not watching? How do they treat those beneath them in status? How do they behave when there is nothing to gain? How do they act around workers, assistants, drivers, technicians, editors, staff, random people with no social value to them? That is where the truth lies. And many of these stars would fail that test immediately. That is why I have no worship left in me for that world. I have seen enough polish wrapped around bad humanity, enough beauty wrapped around contempt, enough coolness wrapped around emptiness, enough public charm hiding private ugliness. And the fans never want to hear it because fans are not defending truth, they are defending investment. Once somebody has projected enough fantasy into an image, they will fight to protect that image even against reality. They need the idol because the idol is carrying something for them. Aspiration, escape, desire, identity, mood, memory, fantasy. So when reality appears and says this person may actually be hollow, cruel, fake, or deeply compromised, they do not evaluate it cleanly. They panic. Because if the idol is false, then what were they kneeling to? That is the real terror. Not that celebrities are bad. That millions of people build inner altars to people who do not deserve a candle. Norilsk in my mind destroys the altar. Norilsk says enough. Enough seduction. Enough PR. Enough image management spirituality. Enough fake intensity. Enough luxury depression turned into art. Enough polished selfishness presented as genius. Enough fragile narcissists treated like prophets because they know how to occupy a lens. The Norilsk spirit does not care how beautiful the fraud is. It asks one thing. Can it survive pressure? That is the law. Pressure reveals. Pressure is holy because it cannot be bribed. Pressure does not care about reputation. Pressure does not care about fan bases. Pressure does not care about carefully edited identity. Pressure strips. And once pressure strips a person, what remains is usually much smaller than the public imagined. That is why harsh places matter in the imagination. They become internal judges. They become climates of truth. They remind you that there is still a reality beyond public relations. I don't need Norilsk to be a fantasy paradise. I need it to remain what it is in my mind, a counterspell against the age of appearance. A place of cold civic force. A place of industrial seriousness. A place that symbolically crushes vanity. A place that reminds me that the world is not made by influencers and polished frauds. It is held together by workers, operators, drivers, welders, miners, engineers, technicians, people underweight, people inside ugly systems, people doing necessary things without applause. That matters more to me than 1,000 famous faces. Because the worker has reality. The operator has consequence. The builder has proof. The star often only has atmosphere. An atmosphere without character is perfume on rot. That is why I speak this way. Because I am tired of seeing ordinary people psychologically conquered by edited masks. I am tired of the machine taking shallow people, polishing them, protecting them, multiplying them, then feeding them back to the public as ideals. I am tired of fake cool. Fake cool is one of the ugliest poisons ever sold. It teaches people to value distance over decency, image over integrity, detachment over depth, status over substance, irony over truth, aesthetics over soul. And once enough people absorb that poison, a culture begins admiring the wrong traits. Now the rude person looks powerful. Now the self-obsessed person looks magnetic. Now the emotionally vacant person looks mysterious. Now the manipulator looks sophisticated. Now the narcissist looks iconic. Now the morally empty person looks aspirational because the camera loves the bones of their face and the team behind them knows color grading. Pathetic. That is not civilization. That is mass hypnosis through packaging. So no, I do not bow to stars. I do not care how famous they are. I do not care how loved they are. I do not care how many millions scream their name. If the human being is ugly under the varnish, then the whole thing is contaminated. And this is where weak people panic because they have been trained to separate talent from character in ways that always benefit the market. They say genius excuses everything. They say art is separate. They say fame is complicated. They say nobody is perfect. They say the pressure is hard. They say the public does not understand. Enough. Imperfection is not the issue. Being a piece of is the issue. And a lot of people confuse the two because they are addicted to what the product gives them emotionally. I'm not interested in products. I'm interested in signal. Signal survives contact with truth. Signal survives pressure. Signal does not need handlers. Signal does not need spin. Signal does not need 10 layers of PR makeup to remain standing. That is why the Norilsk spirit matters to me, because it burns away excess, it cuts through performance. It puts me mentally in a place where steel matters more than sentiment, endurance matters more than image, and reality matters more than applause. I would rather stand in that psychic cold than in the warm sewer of celebrity worship. I would rather take one breath of industrial truth than spend a year inhaling public relations. I would rather build around weight than around optics. And I think many people listening know exactly what I mean, even if they have never said it out loud. They have felt the disgust. They have seen beloved public figures behave like trash in private. They have watched good-looking frauds get treated like saints. They have noticed how the public keeps rewarding image, even when the humanity behind it is clearly degraded. That disgust is healthy. Do not medicate it away. Refine it. Use it to sharpen discernment. Use it to stop kneeling before surfaces. Use it to stop mistaking fame for worth. Use it to stop handing your inner world to curated strangers. Use it to remember that character is still the law, even if the modern machine pretends otherwise. So here is the correction. Stop worshiping people because the image is clean. Stop confusing cool with good. Stop assuming the admired are admirable. Stop letting public relations decide who gets authority in your mind. Look for pressure. Look for treatment of ordinary people. Look for consistency away from the lens. Look for whether the person can exist without constant image maintenance. Look for whether reality strengthens them or whether only packaging does. That is where judgment becomes clean again. And if you need a symbol to keep your mind out of the sewage of modern image culture, use Norilsk. Not as tourism, as principle, as inner climate, as a cold industrial refusal of fraud, as a place in the mind where the fake cannot breathe long. That is what it is for me. Not an accessory, a standard, a hard northern signal against the swamp of performance. Subscribe now if you understand this. Subscribe if you are tired of public relations replacing truth. Subscribe if you are tired of beautiful frauds being sold as human ideals. Subscribe if you can feel the difference between packaging and character. Subscribe if you would rather stand in cold reality than kneel in warm illusion. I'm DJ NOVOSTAR. This is the NOVOSTAR signal.